There were many surreal, even absurd parts of this week. Dropping our kids off at school on Wednesday morning, feeling that rush of emotion as we recognize how that mundane act took on such poignant significance after Tuesday. Being reminded of the staggering hypocrisy of those who call themselves pro-life, who refuse to consider increased safety regulations on lethal weapons. Absurd. In my role as a rabbi, realizing that adding the names of the 19 beautiful children and 2 heroic teachers to our Kaddish list this week would make it the longest list for Shiva we've ever had, without even including the other precious souls from Buffalo who lost their lives only days before. Absurd. Asking ourselves, does this hurt as much as it should? Or is there a numbing and normalizing that we have allowed to penetrate our minds and hearts? And what does that make us? That long lists of victims is par for the course in America. That we have fully integrated mass shootings and gun violence into the moral universe that we live in. But then, arriving at this point, the absurdity melts away because as Jews, the moral universe we live in, whatever it is filtered through the lens of Jewish values. And Jewish values bring clarity to a chaotic picture. Those values and teachings, the entire system of Jewish law that we have inherited, was built, was constructed, was conceived to help us focus and ground ourselves after unspeakable and disorienting tragedies. So let us draw upon them now for a moment or two to do just that, to find grounding and focus. First of all, pikuach nefesh, the call, responsibility to save a life, is the most important halakhic principle. It takes precedence over everything, even other very important things. It is why, when weighing, for example, our choices around COVID during the last 2 years, we were often among the most cautious communities because of this Jewish value. That is the claim that Jewish tradition makes upon us in every moment in our lives. The preservation of life is paramount. Secondly, Jewish law recognizes the need to defend oneself, even with lethal force if necessary. That is present in our tradition. But this instruction that if someone is coming to kill you, you kill them first, is based upon the precept of protecting life. We understand that someone with violence in their heart needs to be stopped before they take other lives, and self-defense in Jewish law must be measured based upon the actual threat. That is what we are allowed to return. Thirdly, Jewish law instructs that it is not permitted to sell weapons to individuals labeled in our tradition as heretics, or in our modern understanding, people who are not compelled by a strict moral code, whether because of the evil impulses that they entertain and house within themselves, or because of mental illness. This responsibility lies in our tradition upon the seller of weapons. They must withhold, they must not profit from someone who is not able to make a moral choice. Fourthly, our tradition teaches that the glorification of weapons is wrong. Weapons should not be carried for show. Weapons should not be carried as symbols. This is reprehensible, so says our tradition. This is just a few of the many teachings that our tradition offers us when we try to make sense of this absurd moment. All of these instructions weigh the need for self-defense through weapons against the highest call to preserve life and peace. There are competing values always in a moral universe that Judaism recognizes. We do not live in a black and white world. Our tradition does not describe a world like that. There are always competing priorities, but saving lives always wins out, always. Through Jewish eyes, it wins out over any constitutional amendment, over any hobby or family tradition, over any vague sense of impending fear. The immediate saving of a life wins. So our outrage about inadequate gun safety laws is completely justified, based not upon being liberal, but based upon our Jewish values that are hundreds and thousands of years old. Our B'nai Mitzvah students, like Charlie, begin their exploration of their service project by studying a well-known Mishnaic text, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor v'lo ata ben chorin lehibatel mimena. It is not your job, it is not upon your shoulders to complete the work, but you are not free to desist from it. The rabbis offer us this teaching because they wanted to be sure that the knowledge that we would not succeed completely in eradicating a problem would never be used as a rationalization for not trying to eradicate the problem. And this issue, by its very nature, a matter of immediate life and death, rises to a level of urgency and magnitude that we are not permitted to look away from, even if we cannot fix it. And we know we cannot fix it. An example, House Bill 37 passed the Louisiana House on Tuesday and is now in our state Senate, scheduled for a hearing in committee next week. If passed, it would make Louisiana a permitless carry gun state by removing permit and training regulations for carrying a concealed gun. There may be a need to speak against this bill if it comes up for discussion next week. And if it does, we must stand. Even if we will lose, we must, because Lo ata ben chorin lehibatel mimena, you are not permitted to desist. Our tradition demands that we preserve human life whenever we can. So when faced with the unspeakable, senseless violence that we were this week, and faced with the absurdity of our public conversation around it, here is our Jewish answer. Yes, of course, we must harden targets, like synagogues, like schools. We must, because it preserves life. Yes, we must equip teachers and our precious children with training we would do anything to keep them from needing, because this preserves life. And yes, we must keep working and voting for those who would put the value of human life above the other important values in our lives. People who will create more regulation that creates more safety in our community around lethal weapons. Because that is what Judaism teaches us to do. It preserves life. And anyone who says that we should only do one of these things or two of these things is not living according to Jewish values. I conclude tonight with words directed toward the bereaved families in Uvalde, and especially the children and the loved ones who were lost. To all those whose lives have been shattered because we as an American society have been complacent, we have let hopelessness get in the way of our continuing to work toward a safer world. And the only way to do that is to continually, day by day, bit by bit, build enough power to stand against those who would see it differently. May the power that we build in the coming months and years be great enough to shield those who come after us. the Hebrew that I will offer in these final moments, we know as a prayer for protection, Hashkivenu. We sing it often, perhaps by a different tune. And it says, may God protect and comfort them all, us all. And may our hands and voices and votes be a Sukkot Shalom, a shelter of peace that they need, that they needed, and that we all need to rise up each day l'chaim, to life. There are moments that the words don't reach. There's a suffering too terrible to name. You hold your child as tight as you can and push away the unimaginable. There are moments when we're in so deep, it feels easier to just swim down. So we move uptown and learn to live with the unimaginable. Look at where we are. Look at where we started. We know we don't deserve you. Hear us out, that would be enough. If we could save your life, if we could trade your life for ours, you'd be standing here right now, and you would smile, that would be enough. We don't pretend to know the challenges we're facing. We know there's no replacing what we've lost, and we need time. But we're not afraid. No, we're not afraid. Let us stand here side by side. May that be enough. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom. V'ha'amidenu malkeinu l'chayim. Ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukkot shlomecha. Amen. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai, guard us from all harmful things. O Adonai, keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. O Adonai. Shabbat Shalom.